we can't say someone's old. That would be not cool to, I'm an older person, and I would be insulted if someone said, well, Russ, you're an older person, right? You're different than me, and you can't say that. But we can say that millennials Gen Xers are lazy and don't want to work hard. I mean, that's just what I hear all the time. And it's like so not true, right? The generational changes are real, but not real because, they're real because of that culture thing. The environment's changed, right? The nature has not changed. The environment's changed, and the culture in between there has changed. And some of these things I'm talking about have shifted people's thinking, right? The young girl that wanted to leave the bank at 4:00 to go kickboxing, this person is not lazy. She's not. She's got all the same values that I have. She wants to do a good job, but she also has boundaries around what it is because she's done the calculus in her head about the return on investment for that. And she also realizes that her health is important, right? And that her social well-being is important, and her mental health is important. So kickboxing becomes the foundation of who she is. And, a baby boomer might not see that, but that's kind of the wrong. We have to open our eyes and say, people need to get what they need. It doesn't mean we give it to them. It just means that, these are realities we have to accept. She's not lazy. Her values are strong in these other areas. So what you might want to do is create a kickboxing team for the bank and invite other people to do it with them, right? That might be a better approach than just, giving her a hard time about not kickboxing. So Michael, you and I have we've gone to school a lot. We've got, we have access to databases that a lot of people don't necessarily have, right? Because of our universities that we attended and that we still teach at and we have access to, right? But those same things are available on the internet in some form or another, right? My father couldn't go start a business and go learn everything he could want to learn about a particular engineering element unless he went to college and did that specifically. Today, people are going and educating themselves online, which means they can then go start a business. They can go do certain things, right? If you're a worker in a company, look at the access. I mean, how many times have you asked Siri to go look up something or Googled yourself? During this meeting with you, Michael, I went and looked up the author of one of the books that I'm involved in. I wanted to look at that, right? And I got access to it, right? I found out about it through those channels, right? And then I engaged in it. So information is all over the place, which basically flattens the playing field, right? A company does not own that resource, and it's all about transparency and exchange and open system, open architecture. And, I think Google's trying to put every book online. I mean, this is continuing to be a reality, which then flattens the playing field for all kinds of people. The desire to be fulfilled is a critical point of today's society. Now this isn't for every society, but in our society, there's an expectation that we're going to do. We're going to do better. We all have cell phones. We all see the world. We all have expectations about what we want for our lives. People are going into deep exploration about what they want. COVID has demonstrated that. How many people do you know have maybe changed their lives during this COVID experience or thought about what they do, which is part of the great resignation, really, right? People are leaving and changing because they've realized, oh, wow, I might not be as happy or fulfilled as I thought I was when they take a minute to think about it, right? People want to be fulfilled. And it doesn't matter who you are, you want fulfillment, whatever that fulfillment is. And all of these things that I'm talking about have created the conditions or the environment where they can be fulfilled to some degree. Or again, it's the pursuit of happiness, not necessarily getting happiness, right? They can pursue their happiness and they pursue it more deliberately. Self-branding. People are, TikTok is a great example of people creating these little brands and, getting, 100,000 followers and 1 million views on something. People are identifying, and creating their own identifications around this stuff. It's not just put your head down and work. It's also like this whole other dynamic that we have. So people want to be branded and people want to, proud of themselves and kind of have an idea about themselves and they get in touch with themselves. So, and the other thing that's important is that we have some, I think what's interesting is that we have actually some prototypes of tools that exist right now that are giving us a hint into the future. There are prototypes. So I used to think, well, how is that possible? I mean, so if I want to be a gig worker, in other words, maybe get 5 contracts and go work for, instead of one company like Raytheon, why don't I go work for 5 companies and I can sell my time that way, right? And, manage what I want to do, right? There was no really way of doing that. I would have to, be years of running around trying to meet people and trying to, and building the credentials I needed to do it. And back then credentials had to be, like from an institution. Today, it's not necessarily the case. You can build credentials through experience and work experience and working at different companies, right? But back then it was really more formal and there was no real way of doing it. And to me, it was like, well, and communities of practice is a great idea, but where do I go and practice? Like, will we all drive to a restaurant? Like, it wasn't necessarily the same, right? So we see a tool right now, which is fundamentally kind of a prototype of what it might look like in the future. And that is LinkedIn. LinkedIn has your picture, your bio, tells people where you work, what kind of club, what kind of interesting things that you've done. I think it used to have books you've read. I don't know if it has that anymore. Your work experience, you get testimonials from people. And so people can look at that and kind of get a sense of who you are professionally, okay? But I don't know how real a lot of that stuff is. A lot of that's kind of still posturing, right? So people are using LinkedIn as a very powerful hiring tool, recruiting tool. They're using it that way, which is good. But I wonder how different it is from just a resume, which is really just a bunch of, everybody's resume is kind of like a exaggeration or a best light of this situation. And we don't really know when we interview somebody based on a resume and we talk to them and they interview well, but we really don't know, right? So, but that is an example of how the gig economy is accelerated, right? Because now, if I have a good LinkedIn profile and maybe even a homepage, people can kind of go to that and see more about my portfolio and things that I've done and so on and so forth. But I don't know how trustworthy it is. In the future, right, so that's a prototype of what's going to happen. In the future, those tools will be very reliable. So much so that I can imagine a time when the gig economy is everything. Now, I don't want to scare people too much here, but in the future, like I don't know when that's going to be, we're starting to see trends of that now, that the gig economy is really hitting ground. A lot more people are starting businesses because of all these things I just talked about. They're allowing them to do that. They can do multiple things at a time. They can write a book. They can, teach at a college. They can do extended research. They can have 3 clients on the side that they're consulting with, right? If you're an accountant, you can have 5 key clients and just work and have your own little business doing that. There's all kinds of different opportunities for that to happen. In the future, you won't even have to go off and find those because the data will be so reliable that you will be able to look at that data and and that person would have a brand and you would have reputation that, imagine, Michael, you're going to go to your computer someday, right? And you're going to say, geez, I'm looking for a new experience. I'm not looking for a new job. I'm looking for a new experience. I would like to do more work in aerospace, let's say, right? So you'll go into this database, whatever it is, this platform, whatever it is, and you'll write in there, you'll put in there, here's my portfolio, this is all my experiences. You'll have ratings and scores just like you would a book, right? 5 stars, 4.5 stars, 300 people scored you. Pretty reliable, right? And it might not be exactly like that, but there'll be some kind of reliable system, right? And then you'll go to your computer, you'll put in, I want to work in aerospace. I'd like to work with this kind of technology. I'd like to do this kind of stuff. And what's going to come back is three offers, not 3 interviews. What'll come back is there's 3 assignments, Michael, that we have for you. What you'll say is, okay, you know what? I really want to be in San Diego. Let me take that one in San Diego and I can work remotely and I can travel back. Oh, that fits me. I'm going to take that. And you're going to type back and say, you're going to have enough information for that to say, yes, I want to do that. Now, why you're going to be able to do that is because the culture will be so good in these operations that it's not going to be, you're going to have understood what that culture is before you even take the job, right? And because you're in a certain environment or industry or whatever it is, there's going to be a standard culture that's part of that. And we won't have to work for bad bosses, because if they're bad bosses, they'll get bad scores and no one will go work for them. You see what I'm saying? It's like there'll be this There'll be the self-selection process of how we hire people. Now, how do we do it today? We do exactly like we used to do in 1950. We collect a bunch of resumes. We have a human being look at them. Maybe a computer system sorts through it. We look at them and we say, these 3 people, let's sign up these 3 people and bring them in for an interview. They come in for an interview. That's not a perfect process. You hire somebody and it turns out, well, they were okay. They're not really what they're not really what they represented themselves to be. And so that old system of just collecting the resumes and going through the interview process and everything else, we do that better today. We just do it faster and in a bigger way. You still have to go for an interview, but now instead the HR person gets to look through 200 resumes. And then after those 200 resumes, they get to score them and break them down again. And they get it down to 4 people and then they phone screen them and then they bring them in. And it's the same process. It's just they use technology for that process. But in the future, these processes will change completely. They won't be the same process. And we as leaders have to think differently about that. We have to think in terms of not just making the process we have faster and better with more volume. We have to make the process different.